theyeshiva.net.
We'll start Be'ezer Hashem today a new Maamer. It's not going to be on the Parsha, it's going to be on a later Parsha. But as you know,
we'll catch up.
No, these Maamerim, the Parsha is an entry into to an idea, into a concept that's timeless. The Alter Rebbe, the son of the Baal HaTanya, said that the psukim with which the Maamerim begins are in a passport. It's a passport. The journey, the passport, to get in through security, to get on the plane, you need a passport to get into the country. Once you're in the country, you put away the passport. Huh? Page 60. It's Lamed, column 3. Lamed Amid Gimel. Vayehi Miketz nasayim yamim upare chaylam v'goymer. It's a pasuk of the beginning of Miketz. At the end of 2 years, Pare has a dream, his famous dream. He's by the river, and there's 7 fat cows that emerge, followed by 7 lean cows. The 7 lean cows swallow the 7 fat cows. A similar dream with 7 ears of grain that are robust, followed by 7 ears of grain that are emaciated or lean, and they swallow them up. And the whole continuation of the story, Yosef interprets the dream, 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine that will swallow up the 7 years of plenty, and hence we have to store food, and Yosef becomes the prime minister of Egypt. It's a story in a sentence. It says, Hine parsha zu mechuberes leparsha shalafanaha, v'lo zocher sara mashke mes Yosef vayishkacheu. The last words of Vayeshev are Yosef is, of course, in prison. He's been there for years. He finally thinks that he's going to be helped by the butler of Paroi, whose dream he explained and deciphered as somebody who will soon find salvation and freedom, and that's exactly what happens. When the butler and the baker share their dreams and Yosef interprets them, and he begs him to go to Paroi and plead on his behalf as an advocate for his innocence so that he could release him from prison. But the pasuk says he forgot about him. So the last pasuk of a parsha and the beginning of the next parsha are connected because it's one after the other. Even though we wait a week between one and the other, but in the Torah it's mechuber, it's connected. So he says ki mipnei sheloi zachar. I don't know if he means mechuber that there's no hefsek. Mamash. Anybody knows the psuchas and the stumas here? Okay. Parshas mechuber, in other words, one parsha goes into the other one. So he says, "B'pnei sheloi zachar nishave vayehi miketz." It's not stam, 2 separate things. Because he didn't remember, from this happened the Vayehi Miketz. So al pi pshat it means there was the need for another way to get Yosef out of prison. And al pi pshat, either it would have happened this way, it didn't work out this way. So what happened was Vayehi Miketz. That's al pi pshat. You can explain here the whole thing on a deeper level. Ubiyah de'inyan. K'moishi yashpare v'sar hamashkim b'klippa kach zel u'mazeh asel lekim shekemokim b'sitri d'gdusha yesh gam kim b'chinas elu. There's a klal, the pasuk in Koheles, Shlomo HaMelech says, zel u'mazeh asel lekim. Everything in the world is zel u'mazeh. Every force has a counterforce. Practically speaking means if you're doing something good, somebody's going to say something bad about you. Or as they say, as they say in English, no good deed goes unpunished. That's how it is. Zel u'mazeh. If something very powerful is happening, there's always a counterforce. It creates balance in the world. But it means both ways. Keneged every koyach in Kedusha. There's a koyach of l'umazeh. L'umazeh means the other side, the parallel side, the contrasting force. And the keneged every koyach in Klippa, there has to be a koyach in Kedusha against it. Now, there's no such a thing. A person has an obstacle, a challenge, a skeleton, a issue to overcome, and there's no force in positivity in your psyche that can't deal with it. As the Gemara says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makdim refuah l'maka, which represents, in other words, that every challenge, it may be a serious challenge, but there's a koyach to address it. There's a counter force that can deal with it. That's called Zelu Umaz. That's what he's teaching here. Usually we say Kedusha has Klippa. Here he says Klippa also has Kedusha. Works the other way also, which is a very important idea. A person is facing something, and they may be facing something very heavy. There's resources within their soul which they may have to access that could confront, can help them deal with this situation according to the best outcome possible under these circumstances. So he says, when you have it, you have Para, you have a Para's butler, you have Para's baker, all these characters in Chumash. So Para was Para. He wasn't a great saint and a great hero. And the Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Oifim were also not such great tzaddikim. But the same concept you also have in Kedusha. V'hine, to understand this, he starts explaining. Yesh dalid yisoides benefesh ha'adam. Eish ruach mayim afer. In classic philosophy, you already have this in Medrash, you have this in Zoya, you have it in Sefer Yetzirah, you have it in Rambam at length. They saw the world as made up of 4 components. They called it 4 yisoides, 4 foundational elements. Eish, ruach, mayim, afer. It's literally translated as fire, air, water, and earth. In today's literature, they try to translate it a little different, maybe to make it compatible with some understanding of chemistry today.
Science, the horoscope science.
You'll have matter, antimatter, gas, energy, positive, negative. I mean, this is solid. So you have Eish, you have Ruach, you have Mayim, and you have Afer. So you have solid, you have liquid, you have gas, and you have energy. But the concept is one that doesn't only apply physically. In Kabbalah it's brought that the Daled Yisoidus are connected the Daled Oisis Shem Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, connected the 4 worlds Atzilus Bri Yitzir Asiya. In other words, Reb Chaim Vital writes in Shari Kedusha that all the midas of a person could be traced back to one of the 4 components, Eish Ruach Mayim Afer. That's why he says this Daled Yisoidus and Nefesh Ha'adam, and the soul is also 4 components. Eish Ruach Mayim Afer. Yisoid Ha'eish Meshkanei Belev. The element of fire dwells primarily in the heart. Passion. Mekor Halechus, the source of moist, is Mehamoyach, from the brain, Sheshamu Mishkan Yisoid Hamayim. That's the dwelling of the component of water. Cool, reflective, considerate, relaxed, calculated. Hareya, you have the lungs. Shoyeves kol minei mashke v'leichus mehamoyach aidei hakona l'kareres chaim halev. The lungs draws forth all the subtle moist and liquid from the brain through the windpipe in order to cool the heat of the heart, to fan, to relax the heat of the heart. And then there's the Afar, which he doesn't address right now. So you addressed Eish, primarily connected to the heart, Mayim, primarily connected to the mind, to the brain, and then the Ruach, the ear, so to speak, to cool the heart, he associated with the lungs. V'kach b'nefesh halakis. But this is not just talking about the body or even the animal soul. It's also the godly soul is made up of 4 components. There's the Mayim, and there's the Eish, and there's the Ruach, and there's the Afar. Reb Chaim Vital writes in Shari Kedusha, and it's quoted also in Tanya in the 1st chapter, that the different midas could be associated with the Daled Yisoidus. Chaim Vital writes, he says famously, that Kas and Gaiva, anger and arrogance, are always associated with Yisoid HaEish, fire. He says, Litzonis and Atzvus are Yisoid HaAfar. Depression and cynicism are earth. Because cynicism and depression are seen as very close.
Laziness, right?
Actually, no. I'm sorry. Atzlus and Atzvus, yeah. Atzlus and Atzvus are Yisoid HaAfar. Laziness, sluggishness, and depression are from the Yisoid HaAfar. Litzonis is spiders dvarim betelim is Yisoid HaRuach. idle talk, boasting, making fun of people,
Levity.
not cynicism.
Levity.
Yeah, promiscuous, just light talk that have no substance, That comes from Yisoid HaRuach, ear. And then you have Yisoid HaMayim is Yisoid HaTaiva. Because Mayim atzmichim kol minei tainuk. That's what Ohr Chaim Vital says famously in Shari Kedusha.
Is that Neitz Chaim?
Not in Eitz Chaim, Shari Kedusha. Ohr Chaim Vital has a sefer called Shari Kedusha. Or Shar HaKedusha it's called sometimes. That's what he says there. Here he's addressing it a little bit of a different mahalach. So he tells, even the Nefesh HaLekis, you have these four Yisoidos. Yisoid HaMayim b'moyach, Hibchinas Chachma v'das b'avodas Hashem b'moiche b'machshavta. Yisoid HaMayim in the Nefesh HaLekis is serving Hashem with Chachma and Das. In other words, it's a very mindful experience. You're using your brain, you're using your thoughts. You'll ask a question. The Zohar famously says no thought can grasp him. So when you're dealing with Avodas Hashem, with God, what do you mean you serve Him with your mind? What does the mind do? What does the mindfulness help? No thought can grasp him. He says, Haloiksiv, the answers are, the kasha is a kasha, and the answer is an answer. Haloiksiv, the pasuk says, Noida b'sha'arim baila. We say this in Eishes Chayil, Mishlei, the end of Mishlei, chapter 31 of Mishlei. Noida b'sha'arim baila b'shiftoi im ziknei aretz. Literally it means, we speak about the woman of valor who really lifts up her husband and turns him into the person he's capable of becoming. If you're lucky to have that Eishes Chayil, or you probably have it if you're lucky to see in your wife that Eishes Chayil. That's already a different madrega, to be able to perceive it. V'yesh Ayman, there's a shitta that it's, Mishlei Lamed Aleph was the hesped that Avram Avinu gave by the Levaya of Sarah. It's brought in Sfarim. Vayavi Avram lisped l'Sarah, he said Eishes Chayil by the Levaya of Sarah. And Shlomo Melech recorded it. But I'll call upon him Eich Shaloyiyah.
We sing it by the Chasana.
Noida Basha'arim Baila means her husband is known in the gates. Gates were basically, as Rashi says, V'loit Yoshe B'shar's Daim, that's where the Batei Din, that's where the supreme courts, the courts sat by the gates of the city. Her husband is known by the great people, by the great men of renown. He teaches here from the Zohar, Noida Basha'arim Baila, her husband is Hashem. Hashem is known, but always Basha'arim. Noida Basha'arim Baila. Hashem is known by Sha'arim. Noida comes from the word Yada. V'ha'adam Yada es Chava. Yada es Chava means he had intimacy with Chava. He didn't know Chava, he didn't do a paper on Chava. He had relationships, oneness, zivug with Chava. That's why she becomes pregnant. Noida Basha'arim Baila. Everyone has intimacy with Hashem Basha'arim through Shi'urim. What's Pshat? Noida Basharim Baila Kol Chad Lefim Shi'ur Delay. What God means to one person, it cannot mean to another person. Emes, Leis Machshav Tfisa Beklal. So L'chayra, where does the Mayach come in here? He says, Kol Chad, every person has their own experience of Hashem. In other words, when two people speak about God, it's not two gods, but it's two perceptions, two experiences. My experience can't be your experience. There's no such a thing in Chayvas Halavavas, in the spiritual life, that there's uniform identity. Because every person is different. So therefore it has to be Basha'arim. What Hashem means to you, how you experience Him in your deepest soul, can't be how I experience Him. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, we say it Shabbos morning in many Kehillas, in the Psukim before Baruch, the Mizmorim before Baruch Sha'amar, Ani yadati ki gadol Hashem, v'adeineinu mikol elokim. So usually the emphasis is on what? I know that Hashem is great. And our master is greater than all the gods. But the beginning of the pasuk is equally significant. Ani yadati gadol Hashem. I know. The way I know, you can't know. And the way you know, I can't know. Because yadati, we can have the same information, but not the same intimacy, not the same das. The way it touches you, it can't touch me.
That's based on heritage, and that's based on
Yes. Yeah, it's your relationship. Your relationship has to do with your life experience. It has to do with your chemistry. It has to do with your brain makeup. It has to do with your soul. It has to do with your journey. It has to do with who you are. You could teach the data. I could share it. But the das, the zivug, the chibur of it, the way you connect to something, right? We know two people can hear the same information, For one person, it means the world, and another person, they didn't even notice it. Yeah, this happens all the time, yeah? You say something one person hears, it affects them to the core, it could change their life. The other person is like, what? Okay, what does that have to do with? The information they both heard. But one person was in the space where they could hear it. The other person was in a space they can't hear. It doesn't mean anything to them. Right? You can hear the same information. For one person, it's meaningless. For one person, it means everything. That all has to do with who you are. It's not about the information. So that's why he asked the question, what's Pshat serving Hashem with your mind? Less machshav tzvis. Kol chad noida basharim baila. Every person is from Shura Delay. Every person from Shura Delay. So this means that all spiritual growth has to do with people understanding that there's no two people who have the same spiritual experience. There's no two people who have the same experience of Hashem. If it's to be internalized. If it's to be external, then everyone has the same experience. You could do the same thing. But in an internal space, there must be diversity. There must be diversity because my internal space is not your internal space. Unless we can create a society where everybody is identical. But we already established that the Torah Flugga failed. So in 2016, despite many attempts of great people among us, it's probably not going to succeed again. If that's what you heard, then that's...
So if you take 30 people in this room,
yeah.
and you cut down their view of what you just said, you're going to have a consensus.
Yes.
You're not going to have an identity.
Right. One day, when we all grow up a little bit, the right thing for me would be now to stop and ask every person to share what God means to them in their deepest space. And what is the thing about God that makes them most afraid, upset, angry, or loved? That would be the proper thing to do now.
That would be the proof.
That would be the proper thing to do in order to understand what the Baal HaTanya is saying. Because I'm just saying words, but to understand what he's saying, there has to be das. If there has to be das, people have to actually see what goes on in people's hearts in a very deep space. But for that, we have to have trust for each other.
There have to be courage to say that.
Courage. 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 Also, no kids that you have to marry off. No kids that you have to get into yeshiva. No girls that you have to get into seminary. No parnasa that you're dependent on anybody else. No shul that's gonna, 18 for Shea will accept you, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So once all that's done, you'll come back and we'll do it. But no, this is a very serious idea. It's not, I'm saying it with humor, but it's a very important idea.
This element he's saying, but what can the Aish on this?
He's talking now about the Mayim. Yisoid HaMayim, Chachma and Das. Vahainu, what is Lefum Shura Delay? What are we even beginning to deal with? What is it? What's this God that we're talking about Lefum Shura Delay? In other words, you can just describe Hashem as the creator of the world and stop asking questions. Right? I mean, our classic education. Right? What do you learn in yeshiva? He created the world. He's the boss. He made a contract. It's called Torah. It's not 9 to 5. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. It goes. There's a few days that are very serious, a few days that are not so serious. And you follow the contract. It's good. You don't follow the contract. What happens? Rabbi Isaac.
You're out.
What happens? You want to describe? Okay, everybody knows.
His face described it.
So where's the individuality here? What's individuality in experiencing God? There's no individual. What's the individuality here? We have a boss, and he made a contract, and you listen. Right? So you're more in the mood, I'm less in the mood? Okay, so fine. That's how it works. I'm more motivated, I'm less motivated, I like the system more, I hate the system more. This one has doubts, this one doesn't have doubts, this one just is obedient, this one is not obedient. What's the real saying that it's a different experience from Shura Delay? The pshat, of course, is Vahainu Hayizbainanus, because we're talking here about a meditation, about a mindfulness. Hizbainanus is always a mindful meditation, from the word bina. Bebchinis is pashtus gdulasi is barach lamayla adein ketzel lamata adein tachlis ein oid malvade ki beruach piv kol tzva. We're talking about understanding and experiencing the divinity that pervades all. The yisoid is that Gdulasa Yisbarach, Gdulasa means his presence, his divine energy, extends, Lamayla Adin Ketz. You can go up as far as you want, infinite, but you can also go down as far as you want, infinitely. In other words, there's no space where you can't find God. Because wherever you are, in the highest space or in the lowest space, You're in reality. And the definition of reality in its core is the divine. Ein oid milvada. Ein oid milvada doesn't mean there's no other God outside of him. It's obvious from his commentary generally everywhere that ein oid milvada here too means that there's nothing else outside of him. What do you mean there's nothing else? There's me and there's you. The answer is ki beruach piv kol tzva. This we say in Tehillim. Bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu, right? Over Tehillim lamed gimel. Also Shabbos. Bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu over ruach piv kol tzva. Meaning, everything, all the legions, all the troops, all the nivroyim of the world are essentially an embodiment, a manifestation of ruach piv, which literally means the ear, the breath of his mouth, but it's a metaphor of the divine energy, which the Torah, for some reason, compared to words and letters.
What's Vaheinu in this pasuk? That shiur of each one?
Yes, in other words, that, because Kabila Maila den Ketz, Kabila Mata den Tachlis, where a person is. For one person, it's in a very abstract, transcendent, sophisticated way, and it goes higher and higher and higher. But as high as you go, Aden Ketz, there's a recognition of Elikus. And as low as you go, Lamata Aden Tachlis, a person is in the dumps, a person is an emotional wreck, a person feels despair, everything is going wrong, you're terrorized by your addictions, by habits, by crushes, by obsessions. And you could find there too the divine energy. L'mayla adin ketz or l'mata adin tachlis. There's no point that you say I'm too low to find God or I'm too high to need God. I'm too high to need God. I'm pretty good. You know, I'm a healthy guy. I'm healthy. I made a couple of dollars yesterday. I'm successful. Yeah, my kids don't hate me. I'm good. I don't need therapy. Yeah, relate, to connect, to be able to connect, to be able to find that your energy, that moment, is divine. And then, even deeper than this, and to understand that everything in his presence doesn't have a distinct significance. Would be like the words of a person. The words of a person, once they come out of us, they have a lot of significance. Once I speak, I can't bring back my words. When your words are still in you, not only your book, they're completely absorbed in you, and they don't have like a separate significance out of you. You don't sit by a chair and you say, okay, this is me, and these are the words that are in me. The words that are in you, that is, it's in you, it's going to come out of you. That means it was you, it was in you. If it wasn't in you, it can't come out of you. But it doesn't have a separate, articulated reality outside of you. So since everything is, he's there, he's present, and the whole energy of the world is only his dibur, so the dibur is still in him. So therefore you could say, Kula kamei kaloi chashav, that essentially, at every moment you can have intimacy, not only with God's energy, but with God himself. Because the dibur is never a chatzitza, it's never a hefsek between his essence and his manifestations. That's even a deeper idea in Noida Bashar and Baila. You can even skip through all the processes and you could go to the core itself because the dibur never really left him. And this he maintains, every person can somehow experience, can somehow, ladas means to know, lahasik means to comprehend, but lefum shura delay means don't compare two people. Every person can somehow, this can be brought to every person's life. That in every situation that they're in, wherever they are, a relationship with their core self, they can have a relationship with their core self. That's what it really means. That in every real moment you're in, you can have a relationship with your core self. You're not alienated from yourself. And what does it mean you're not alienated from yourself? You're not alienated from your true self. What's the true identity of the human condition? It's the ruach piv kol tzvam, it's the divine energy. And the reason is, why am I maintaining this? The reason is, ki ein oid b'shamayim imal. Because whether you're going to heaven above, it's ein oid v'cholel yoinim v'tachtoinim hem nimshachim ruach piv yisbarach ve'ein dover chutz mimenu. All the higher realities, all the lower realities are all an embodiment of his energy, and therefore there's nothing that's chutz mimenu, and that includes you. So there's no space, there's no encounter, there's no moment that the person says, I'm an outcast, I'm lost, I'm detached, I'm alienated, I'm ungodly. The very I is divine. So you don't need to build a relationship with God. On the contrary, you need to discover that's who you are. You need to discover, you think you're disconnected, But essentially a person is connected. And since everything is ruach piv, in other words, it's his dibur, and his dibur is always in him, so therefore, it's really all him himself. This is Yisoid HaMayim. Yisoid HaMayim is mindfulness that includes any of these ideas that we discussed. When a person could really relate to life on this level, this is what's called Yisoid HaMayim of the Nefesh Elikis. It's really a reflective experience. It's a mindful experience. Yisoid HaEish, you have the element of fire. Fire is Hatzimoyin Shabalev. This is thirst. The soul, the passion, the thirst. Hamevin Bizbainin is Gedolasa Yizbarach Veich Mamash Kula Kamei Kole Chashivi. Once the heart perceives this truth, Ulazois Kolsa Nafshe Elav Yizbarach Ba'ava Aza Kirish Veyei Shal Heves Oilam Eleha Likskalul Ba'ir Hashem V'Yechuda Yizbarach. This man was a real mystic. And therefore his soul yearns, he craves with a tremendous love, with a fire, to go out in the light of Hashem and His unity. He's frustrated by the detachment. He's frustrated by the sense of separateness. He doesn't want to be below. This is what a fire flame looks like. You'll never have a flame content, smug, complacent. Tell the flame, relax. You have wick, you have oil, relax. A flame is always swaying, always up, swaying upwards, licking the air, trying like to kiss heaven. He's saying the Aish is trying to kiss heaven. It wants to depart from the wick. It has this tremendous thirst to be able to be included in this oneness. But the Aish follows the Mayim, because if a person really doesn't relate to this as a truth, then what thirst is there? There's no thirst, there's no Aish, there's no fire. But this is really a yearning to be in that space of oneness. I don't want to be outside of that space. And sometimes people, their whole life, they have this thirst. They just don't know, they never knew how to articulate it. They know that nothing works for them. Nothing works for them. The superficiality of life, including sometimes of religious life, present company excluded, never worked for them. So they have this fire. So sometimes this is expressed through frustration. Because when you know you're looking for something and you don't know what it is and you can't find it, so you're just frustrated. But and you become cynical. But the frustration and cynicism is really very idealistic. Some cynicism is unhealthy, some cynicism is idealistic, because it's cynicism that comes from too much pain. And when there's so much pain, you don't want to be hurt again, so you just let go. You don't have hopes anymore, because you don't want the hopes to be shattered. You try too many times. But really, if you can dig into it, what is it? It's really a very deep thirst. It's a deep fire. But it's very hard to live with a fire and then not have it quenched in any way, not have it met. So therefore the person sometimes goes to the other extreme. They're passionate in their cynicism, right? Like somebody once said, the Christian priest once said about Jews, he says, all Jews are religious. He said, it's not true. He says, you don't understand. Even Jews who are atheists, they deny God with religious fervor. But they're religious. They're always religious. Jews don't know how to be not religious. They either love it or they hate it. I heard once from Eli Wiesel, alav Shalom, that Jews know how to love God or hate God. They don't know how to ignore God. In other words, there's always an Aish. The question is how it's translated. So here it's translated in the full experience. But sometimes, I'm sure some of you know people, you even may know that person from the mirror, that your whole life there's a thirst. Something is off. But I don't know to what. What is it? What is it for? Because I don't know. So I think it's this, I think it's that. So one year you're into this, another year you're into this. Some people every year they get into something else. It's called spiritual fads. Spiritual fads, simply to numb the pain. Okay, so it's better than some other things we know that people do to numb the pain. It doesn't kill brain cells. But the concept is a person has to be able to articulate what the Aish is for. What the person is really searching for. This is Yisoid Aish of the Nefesh Elikis. It cannot deal with the separation, the fragmentation. The Aish doesn't want to be Lamat. It wants to be Miyuchad in the sense of in the Achdus, which is there, but he wants to experience it. Mashenkin B'chinas HaMayim hu Mayla Lamat. Mayim is not Aish. Mayim goes downward. Water will always look for the lowest space to descend. Aish is always going up, meaning Shamayim, the Gemara says, Hamayim yordim imakim gavaya lamakim namach. Dahainu. What does this mean? Shemamshich al nafshei Ohr Hashem zu Torah u'mitzvahs l'hoyer al nafshei gam b'yosei l'mata b'bchinas bal korchach atachai. U'kamoy shehamayim mechaben eish kach al yidei ze yir v'tzimoy nafshei kamoy shekosav hoy chol tzomei l'chul amayim kamoy shnizbar b'makamach. Yeshaya Hanavi says, hoy, kol tzomei l'chul amayim. Hoy, like we say, oi, let every thirsty person go drink water. That's Yeshaya Hanavi. So the question obviously is, you need Yeshaya the prophet to tell you that if you're thirsty, you should go drink water. So Baal HaTanya is explaining how he understands the pasuk here. You're not, Mayim is Torah and mitzvahs. You're not thirsty for Torah and mitzvahs. You're thirsty for a spiritual connection. So you might think Mayim is not the way to go. That's the chiddush of Yeshaya Hanavi. You're thirsty for Achdus. You're thirsty for Einoid Malvadai. L'chula Mayim, go to the water. And the structure of Torah and mitzvahs is not up, it's down, it's Mayim. The Gemara in Baba Kama, in Mayim Ela Torah, because it focuses on a concrete, organized, structured life. So l'cha'oire, how does it work for Tzimoyin? It doesn't work for Tzimoyin. Tzimoyin is your fire, you want to go up, you want to depart from the wick. Mayim says, Bal Korchach Atachai. Hashem wants you to be alive. In other words, He wants you to be lamata. So there's an eish, and then there's the mayim that relaxes the eish. It quenches the thirst of the eish. What connects the brain to the heart? For this you have the lungs. You have the windpipe. You have the windpipe that he addressed earlier. The trachea. This represents the source of the letters of Torah Kamashakos of Knei Chachma, Knei Bina, which is the same letters as Kona, V'nikra B'chinazu Sar HaMashkem. This is called the butler, Shaboy Shoyev Hareya Mashkem Ilechus HaMoyach Miyasoid HaMayim Shaboy, through which the Reya extracts, draws moist from the brain, and then uses it to cool off the heart. The Oisius HaTorah, represented by the Kona, Knei Chachma, Knei Bina, allows the Mayim to fan and cool the flames of the Eish, that the person shouldn't experience a complete frustration with this world to a point of Kabi of Klois HaNefesh. Rather, the search, the understanding that Bal Korchach Atachai, that the person ought to come down. In other words, Hashem wants you Bal Korchach Atachai. He wants you in your body. He wants you in a fragmented universe where you have to negotiate unity. And that's the structure of Torah and mitzvahs, which is the Yisoid HaMayim. Ein Mayim ala Torah, hoichol tzomei l'chula Mayim. That ultimately waters quenches the thirst. That Yeshaya Hanavi says there's a lot of ways to deal with thirst. But if you want to know the real way is l'chula Mayim. Ultimately through Mayim, through Torah, you'll be able to quench the thirst. Even though you might say, how can this quench the thirst? I'm looking for absolute transcendence, or what some people call nirvana, one and all in one, and I dissipate into a state of nothingness, and that's where some people get their deepest spiritual connection. So it would be counterintuitive, but that's the whole chiddush of Yeshaya Hanavi, that hoy chol tzamei, I know you're tzamei, but don't get lost in the eish. L'chula mayim. What you need now is the mayim, which is a mayim ala Torah, which is connected to the moyach yisoid hamayim, which goes not milmata lamayla, but milmayla lamata. It's the opposite direction, to be able to find truth where you are, to be able to find God where you are, to be able to introduce that truth into the space of the world. That's the contrast of the mayim and the eish, the moyach and the leiv, which is contributed through the reya, the lungs, and the kana, which allow that link, that synthesis, to happen in a powerful way. So here we are introduced in the first step to the Sar HaMashkem, the butler of Paroi, the Sar HaMashkem connected to mashke, connected to liquid, to beverages, the way, not the way it is in Paroi's palace, but the way it is in the holiness of a person. Okay, so the opening of the Maamer we started, analyzed what's called two components, Yisoid Ha'esh and Yisoid Hamayim, in Avodas Hashem. Yisoid Ha'esh represents passion, thirst, yearning, Yesod Hamayim represents resolution, tranquility, and serenity that cools off, it fans, it relaxes the fire and the thirst. And they're associated, spiritually speaking, and I guess biologically speaking, with the heart and the brain. The heart is considered the primary residence of the Yesod Ha'esh, and the brain is considered the primary residence of the Yesod Hamayim, which spiritually represents two different motions. One is contemplative, thoughtful, reflective. It's about the mindfulness, noida b'sha'arim ba'ila, of the way different people think and experience what Hashem means for them. And he gives the general meditation that every person then ought to apply to themselves according to their capacity of understanding and spiritual sensitivity. The concept that the divine energy pervades everything, l'mayla adein ketz, l'mata adein tachlis, upwards infinitely and downward infinitely. That means in every space it is, and even furthermore, it's like the dibur, and the dibur in the presence of the person himself doesn't have an independent reality and significance, which means at every moment there's a possibility for a relationship with Hashem in the most intimate space without any barriers. Even the words which represent the world never create a real chatzitza between you and the essence of truth at any single moment, which is the key to be able to overcome, not ignore, but overcome, or transcend all of the barriers and thoughts and confusions that sit in people's minds, which essentially are a distraction or a chatzitza between the truth that there's a relationship right now between Hashem and His essence and you are whichever space you're in. Then there is the thirst. When a person really realizes this, there's a thirst, there's a yearning to be able to be included in this oneness. That's the Eish that goes milmata l'mayla, and then there's the Mayim that goes milmayla l'mata, which focuses downward, not upward. So there's the motion in the human being where I want to go away from where I am, I want to transcend where I am, I want to go away from the wick, and I want to kiss heaven. And then there's the polar opposite motion, which is the Yesod Hamayim, which relaxes the Eish by introducing God where you are. Mayim yordim emakam gavoya l'makam namuch hoichal tzamei l'chula mayim, that you have to be able to find your relationship where you are, and that's generally the function of Torah and mitzvahs, which speaks to the human condition on earth, not to the human condition in heaven. Most of Torah deals with material reality. Most of halacha deals with material subjects. Most mitzvahs are about gashmis, whatever it is. The halachas of boider are dealing with onions and cholent and rice and soda bottles, which are as material and mundane, cheesecake and cream and carrots and bones. I'm just giving an example. In other words, you're applying the will of God, which is essentially undefined and infinite, to bones of a piece of fish. Now it sounds very strange, but that's the whole idea of the mayim, that you come downward rather than upward. So those are the two components of mayim and eish. And you have the windpipe and the lungs, which are considered the kana and the reya, the windpipe, the trachea, and the reya, the lungs, which are considered here the link between the Yesod Hamayim of the brain and the Yesod Ha'esh of the lave. Just like we know that the function of the lungs is, of course, to oxygenate. I say that right? Okay. To oxygenate the blood cells. In other words, to give ruach, as he says, ruach, to bring in the ruach, what we would call oxygen, in order that all the blood cells should be able to have the oxygen that they need. And that's the function of the reya that cools off. In other words, cools off here doesn't mean, yeah, it's also very relative for temperature and humidity and all that and how it affects the body. It's quite critical. And it brings the right ruach, the right energy, the right oxygen into the blood, just like it releases, the carbon dioxide, it releases the oxygen, the ruach that you have to release. And that comes back up into the lungs, and ultimately you exhale it. Another one of the great wonders of a person to realize what happens when you inhale and what happens when you exhale, and you never take it for granted again. What the body does with the inhaling and the exhaling, especially when the temperature outdoors is in one way or another way, and how the body responds. Another grand miracle that happens literally every millisecond of your existence. So spiritually speaking, it's the Reya and it's the Kone. The Kone, he says, is Knei Chachma, Knei Bina, Pasuk in Mishle, which represents Oisis HaTorah, Chachma and Bina, that connect the Mayim to the Eish through the Ruach, represented by the windpipe, and the lungs, which are connected through that to the Mayach. Ah? Or not yet. So now the second paragraph. We come now to the dream of the butler, which he presents to Yosef. And what does he say? Remember, Yosef is in prison, and he sees two people, and they're depressed. One morning, Vihinam Zayafim, and Yosef turns to both of them, and he says, Madua pneichem royim hayom. Why do you look sad today? Why do you look depressed? People gloss over that detail in Parshas Vayeshev. Really, that may be the crux of the story. Yosef becomes the prime minister of Egypt because he interprets Paro's dreams, and Paro is pleased. And the reason he interprets Paro's dreams is because the butler told Paro that in prison there's this great man who knows how to explain dreams. But the reason he knows that Yosef knows how to explain dreams is because he shared his dreams with Yosef. But the reason he shared his dreams with Yosef was because Yosef saw that he was depressed, and Yosef said, Madua pneichem royim hayom. Why do you guys look dejected? Why do you look down? Why do you look bad? When you think about it, how many people sitting in prison for 12 years or for 10 years, and they see two people who are on death row in a dungeon in Egypt? This is, it's not a democracy. Egypt wasn't a democracy then, it's a shady democracy now. And you see two people, one guy's going to be executed soon. And they're not your tribe mates, they're not your family, and they're depressed. And they're depressed in prison. And you go over to them and you say, Madua pneichem royim hayom. Why do you look down? What can I do for you? That's what Yosef does. It sounds like he is this jolly, happy-go-lucky. He has no burden in the world. I mean, this kid, what he suffered, right? But he's happy, and now he looks at two Gentiles and he wants to know why you're miserable. Why you're miserable. People wouldn't even go into a beis medrash in the morning and look at the bachim and say, why are you guys miserable? Like, of course, what should we be? I mean, right? I would think of going at 7 o'clock in the morning to a beis medrash, looking at all the boys, you know what they look like early? You remember what they look like early in the morning? Takes a few hours, right, till you,
warm up.
Till you eat a few cheese danishes and you warm up. In the best case scenario, even if they're not. Who says Madua pneichem royim hayom? It tells you about Yosef a lot. And also tells you that that question ultimately saved the world from devastation. In other words, going over to two people who are locked up and asking them, why do you look depressed? And what can I do to help you? That changed history. And this is an important idea, but I'm introducing it here. Because as you'll see, this is going to become a big theme here, in a different context. That the Sar HaMashkim tells Yosef his dream. And what's his dream? It's a longer dream, but the nekuda of the dream is that the Sar HaMashkim says there's a vine in front of me, a grapevine, a geffen. And the geffen produces branches, it produces leaves, and ultimately produces fresh, beautiful, vibrant cluster of grapes. And I take the grapes and I squeeze them, and I fill up goblets of wine, and I place the goblet, the kais, on the kaf, on the hand of Paro. And Yosef interprets it as a very promising dream, that he'll be restored to his position and so forth. The premise of this Maamer was that every reality in Chumash can be interpreted on one level and on another level, physically and spiritually, concretely and metaphysically, in this plane and also on a higher plane. Zelu umazeh asa elikim. They say that the Alter Rebbe once, the son of the Baal HaTanya, after his father passed away, said the first year was Purim. So he was in Shul and the Megillah was being read. Now his father used to read the Megillah. The Baal HaTanya was a Baal Kairi. He would read Shabbos and Yom Tov and Purim, etc. But that year was after his Ptiris. Obviously they had to hire a Baal Kairi. The Seder then in the Shuls was, I think till today in some places, that people would give a tip to the person who read the Megillah. There was like a bucket and people would put in money. It was like a way of supporting the person who read the Megillah. So after they heard the Megillah, put him at night. The Alter Rebbe, the son of the Baal HaTanya, his name was Rabbi Ber, walks out and he gives a huge contribution to the Baal HaTanya. He was a person who was at very poor means, it was known. So everybody was shocked. So they said, "Was is das?" He says, "Azah sheina maisa? Azah sheina maisa?" The Megillah is such a beautiful story you gave us. Unbelievable. So somebody looked at him and said, "Yilmedenu Rabbeinu. I mean, you have heard this story many, many, many years. Was Azah sheina maisa?" The Tata had geleint to give an ananda maisa. My father read the Megillah, it was a different story. Achashverosh was a different Achashverosh, Hama was a different Haman, Bixim Vasedish, different Bixim Vasedish, Parshan Dasa. So he says that you have Sara Mashkim in Kedusha, Pani in Kedusha, etc. Here, finally, I heard it was a nice fiction, a nice novel, a nice drama, but put him, so he deserved a big tip. But the Nakuda is that it wasn't stam a joke. In other words, in his father's words, he heard something else. That two people could say the same thing, but it's a different story, it's a different message. Kol noida basharim baila, as like we discussed. So we have now the chalim going to be interpreted on a deeper level. Hine gefen lefanai v'goymer ve'eschetas ha'anovim. I squeeze out the grapes ve'etenes ha'kois al kaf pare. I place the goblet of wine from the grapes that I just squeezed out on the hand of Pare. Pare is holding his kaf, the palm. He opens the palm of his hand, and I place the cup on Pare's hand. Pirush. What does this mean on a deeper level? Gefen nikra knesses Yisrael. Gefen, we have in Tehillim, Gefen mimitzrayim tasiyah. You took out the Gefen, the vine of Egypt. It represents Knesses Yisrael, the gathering of Jewish souls. Sheklolos kol neshamas Yisrael. The vine encompasses all souls. But then you have grapes. Grapes are individual grapes that grow on the vine, on the grapevine. Ha'anovim hem nitzutze neshamas. The grapes represent the sparks of souls. Shekol anov, shekol nitzutz nikra b'shem anov echad. Every spark is a grape. What's the connection between a grape and a soul? You say the vine represents the klolos of the neshamas. But from the vine come many multiple grapes, individual grapes. Each grapes have their cluster, the cluster that it's hanging onto. Why is every grape called one nitzutz, one aspect? Ki b'chol nitzutz, because in every spark of every Jewish soul, yesh b'chinas yayin. There is wine. The pasuk says, yayin hamesameach elikim v'anoshim. The Tanakh calls yayin. Yayin is a beverage that brings joy to God and brings joy to men. Now we know that wine brings joy to people. People drink and they enjoy it. What's pshat yayin hamisamech elikim va'anoshim? So he says the pshat of yayin is it represents shobchinas avim mesuteris lismoyach b'Hashem. In every single soul there is a hidden love, which basically, what does it mean? You love somebody that you can rejoice with them. That being with them causes you simcha. That's the basic definition of Ava. What does it mean, I love you? I love you. I love being with you. I celebrate your existence. I celebrate your presence. Automatically, everything you say is brilliant. But the point is not what you say. The point is, I like being with you, right? We know sometimes you could be with a person for 7 years, and you're craving for more time. And sometimes you're with a person for 5 minutes and you're like, Ribono Shalom, when can I say a Baruch Shepatrani? HaKol Lefi HaMevayesh VaMezbayesh, right? You could be sitting near somebody on a plane, you have mazel, right? You're going to Israel, you're sitting near somebody on a plane, and like the Eibush does a loisit. The Ma'aseh with Rabbi Saul Salanta, in Ohr Yisrael. I think we spoke about it once. Chaim Shmulevich's shmuz. And then sometimes you can't get enough of a person. Vayiyu be'einav kiyamim achadim, ba'ahavosoi oisa. It says about Yaakov and Rachel. 7 years passed like a few days. Why? Because he loved her. So when you love somebody, so yamim achadim, you can't get enough. You just want to be and be and be. It's not about time. You go to a place that's beyond time. So lismayach ava mesoteris is lismayach b'Hashem. The Jew wants to spend time with God. Now, how many people want to spend time with God? Many people, as little as possible. That's why people get very excited by plag. I told you once. The excitement by plag is very tangible, especially by Ma'ariv, especially in the winter. Because basically, what is it, 3:45, and you're done till tomorrow morning. Can you imagine there's no religion from 4 p.m. for the next 16 hours? How often do you have that in Judaism? For 16 hours, you're on vacation. You're off, barbecue, go have fun. We'll see you tomorrow by Vasikin, or whenever you're going to show up. Maybe tomorrow you'll come later for Shachris too. But the point is, some people daven because they want to finish davening. And some people daven because they never want to finish davening. That's the most natural place to be. So every Jew has to daven. So everyone davens. But why do you daven? Why you davening to finish davening? Because you can't finish if you don't start. So you have to start in order to finish. But the tachlis is to finish. And once you're finished, fine. He's talking here about l'smoyach b'Hashem. That's called yayin. Amisameach elikim v'anashim. It's the one that the simcha that connects elikim v'anashim. That ava exists, but it may be concealed. That's why every soul is called a grape. Because when you look at a soul, you look at a grape, you don't see wine. But if you press the grape, you'll see the wine. If you go deeper, if you can excavate the depth of the Jew, you'll always find there the yayin hamisameach elikim v'anashim. To the Santa Maisa, they say, the Baal HaTanya, after the Mezritcha Maggid passed, he was a chassid Talmud by the Maggid. Maggid passed away, Yutas Kislev, Tov Kuf Lamed Gimel, 1772, 12 years after his Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov. When he passed away, Reb Mendel Haradoker, who authored a sefer called Pri Haaretz, one of the early works of Chassidus called Pri Haaretz by Reb Menachem Mendel. He came from the city called Haradok. He's also known as Vitebsk. He came from Vitebsk. So the Baal HaTanya accepted him as his Rebbe for a few years till he made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. Around 14 years later, he went up to Eretz Yisrael. The first group of Chassidim, Talmidei Hagro, went up, and the Talmidim of the Maggid went up. They settled in Tveria. Baal HaTanya also went up, but Reb Mendel sent him back. He didn't let him go. He said, you have to lead Russia. So he went back. He was on his way also. So the first Rosh Hashanah, he went to Reb Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. So the daven was known in Chabad Rebbe's. They davened the first night of Rosh Hashanah for 4 hours, Ma'ariv. So at least 3-4 hours, Ma'ariv the first night Rosh Hashanah. So Reb Mendel Vitebsker finished Ma'ariv Rosh Hashanah, and he went home and he had Suda, and all this, a lot of Talmidim were there. And he wants to make Kiddush, and the Baal HaTanya is not there, and he had tremendous respect for him. So he said, Vu, where is he? So they don't know. So he asked somebody if he could go check in Shul. The person went to check, and he said, he's davening in Shul. It was already late. So he comes back, so he decided to go himself. So Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk goes himself to Shul, and he comes back, and he looks at the Olam, and he says, this is his word, he says, freit sich mit den Ebersten, und der Eberste freit sich mit dem. He is rejoicing with God, and God is rejoicing with him. Let's make Kiddush. Freit sich mit den Ebersten, und der Eberste freit sich mit dem. That was his lashon. That's the yayin hamisameach elikim v'anosh. Elish mesuteret v'hi Yerushalonu ma'aviseinu. You might think this is not me. I'm not this person. So he says it's not even something you choose. So Yerusha. This is part of the spiritual gene of the Jewish soul. It's like a genetic mutation that comes already from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Elishim esoteres ma'od. It's very concealed. K'mayayin anitmen ba'anovim. Like wine hidden in grapes. Sha'anav hu agul v'chalak o makif oisei mikol tzad. The grape is round and smooth and surrounds the wine, the beverage, the liquid from every side. In other words, that it's not just you look at it from a certain angle and you'll see the wine. The wine is completely internal. There's no way to extract the wine. You have to squeeze it. Udriche begas. Gas, you know what a gas is, right? Beis hagas, you have often in Mishnayos, is a place where they press grapes, where they produce wine. Dricha, you have to trod. Dricha is doirich, to step. Begas, in the wine press. Gas is a wine press. Lahasir me'alav haklipa asevevesais. Because the grape becomes a shell, a klipa, it's a shell, a shalachts, that surrounds it, and then you get out the wine. But you can't just take out the klipa. You have to press the wine, and then you remove the klipa, and you can take out the wine. Kach, that's why a Jew is called a grape. There's no way you can reveal the secret of love. Matspune comes from the word safon, like the afikoimon. It's hidden. Today in Hebrew you have matspun as a conscience. But the real word matspun is from the word tzofon, concealed, matzvoine, the concealed love, kiyimai debchinas mevachem. There has to be the crushing of the grape. That's why the Mishnah says, ve'avei shval ruach b'fnei kol adam. Pirkei Avos. Be humble before every person. V'lo yashpilu acherim. Don't think this means that other people should belittle you. Other people should crush you. You would think, that's the way you'll experience Avos Hashem. Make sure you go visit somebody who will tell you every day that you are worthless. And that will be a great ingredient for Avos Hashem.
What's mevachim?
Mevachim from the word bitush. Levatesh is to grind, right? Crush. He says, I'm not Vehevi shval ruach doesn't mean you should be humble. In other words, that people see you and they tell you that you're worthless. No. Kiyim vehevei shval ruach, hevei ba'atzmecha. Hevei, this is a mitzvah on you, not a mitzvah on me to make you a shval ruach. If I'm making somebody else a shval ruach, I'm not doing what Chazal are saying. I'm doing what I want to do for my own issues. Vehevei, they're talking to the person himself. You should be a humble person. That's a very key distinction in life. When somebody says, my mission in life is to crush other people, so they could be mekayim the mitzvah, vehevei shval ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam. So that's my duty. My duty is to tell everybody how worthless they are, how inconsequential they are, how irrelevant they are, how evil they are, how arrogant they are, how horrible they are, and how distorted they are, so they'll feel humble. He says, that has nothing to do with this.
Isn't the outcome the same?
No way. No way.
How can you be
It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite outcome. When somebody else does it, it's the exact opposite outcome.
How can you do it yourself and not have the same outcome?
You're not destructive.
What does it mean to do it to yourself? It means you should be humble. You'll see in a moment. You'll see in a moment what it means. When his point is that it's not that v'shval ruach doesn't mean that a person is mavatal other people, crushes other people. Ve'evei, you're talking to a person that you should create within yourself an openness to be humble in the presence. What does it mean to be humble in the presence of it? How could you be humble in the presence of every person? I understand you could be humble in the presence of certain people. How could you be humble in the presence of every b'fnei kol ha'adam? That's what the Mishnah says. Ve'evei shval ruach. So the Tanya asks this question in Perek Lamed. That's how he starts off the question. And he says, Vehevei is be'emes la'mitay. That's how he starts off. Vehevei is be'emes la'mitay. When it says Vehevei, it means truthfully Vehevei. Often when we read these Maamer Chazal, we often think it's just a...
Metaphor.
It's prose. It's cute language. Be humble in front of every person. Fine, so you'll have those saints who are humble before all people because they don't, maybe a little naive or they're in the clouds. But there's certain people that you actually know. How could you be humble? I can understand I could be humble in the presence of people I don't know. But what about people that I do know? Present company excluded. What about people that you know, and you know sometimes that maybe you don't have to feel humble in their presence? So it says, V'havei be'emes la'mitay. So what he explains there at length is that humility actually comes from expansiveness. Humility comes, great people are humble people. Small people are arrogant people. The greater a person is, the more humble he is. Because the greater a person is, the more you know that you really don't know. When you're small, you think, I don't know because I don't know. But if I learn a little bit, I'll know. Really great people are acutely aware of the infinite mystery in the universe and the infinite mystery in every person. Whenever anybody gets to know somebody, the human psyche is so intricately complex, multifaceted, multidimensional. I don't even know myself. You know me. Even you don't know who you are. You think I'm going to know you? So humility really comes from the idea that a person never understands another person's journey or struggles. And even if you do know their journey, if you didn't experience their journey, you need to really come from a place of humility to learn, to explore, and even be humble in the presence of your own journey. That also causes humility. You even understand everything in your own life. So when a person understands that, it doesn't mean I agree with everybody's behavior, but it means I don't sit on a throne of a feeling of I am superior than you, holier than thou, and I have the right to judge you, because if you haven't put on my shoes and you haven't been wearing my glasses and you didn't grow up in my home and you didn't go through what I went through at this age or that age or that age, You need to have the humility to be able to stand back and marvel and ask questions more than you answer questions. So that's the idea, b'fnei kol adam, and this is anybody. This doesn't mean that person is a saint, doesn't mean that person didn't make terrible mistakes. But it means that whenever you're coming from a place of hubris, of inflated ego, of arrogance, it's not coming from intelligence. It's coming on the contrary, from either fear or insecurity, or you really can't see things from a truthful perspective. So when a person understands that, they have a certain humility that allows them to be inquisitive, to be curious, to open themselves up, and to ask questions. I would say one of the greatest plagues in societies is the curse of judgmentalism. Judgmentalism is that when somebody doesn't look like me or agree with me, I right away have to put them down internally, emotionally. What does it come from? That comes from, you think, sophistication and confidence? Doesn't come from sophistication and confidence. The most confident people are always the most humble people. The most spiritual people are also the most humble people. The most godly people are also the most humble people. Not because they're not abhorred by immoral behavior. They're more abhorred by immoral behavior. But they understand that life is a journey. And they understand that people exist on their journey. And just because you're not me, it doesn't make you less significant. And your choices don't threaten my choices. And the most important thing is that I have to be sensitive to what you're going through. And ask myself, if I would have had your Yetzer Hara or your struggles, would have I not behaved in the same way? Or maybe what's worth? This is what the Tanya says, Perek Lamed. He says, sometimes you look at a person, I'll quote you a line over there. V'yitzroi boyer ketanur boyeira me'oifa. He has a Yetzer Hara that burns like a baker's oven. You ever went to a matzah bakery? You have ovens that are 500 degrees. You have ovens that are 5,000 degrees. You ever put your finger in such an oven? So he says, some people have Yetzer Haras, v'sebrent ketanur, like a matzah oven. You don't have such a Yetzer Hara, you're lucky. Some people, that's what they have. So now, this doesn't mean their choices are correct, but it means don't sit and judge them, because if you would have had even 10% of that passion, where would have you been? You have a mazel, you're antisocial, you're cold, you're a bookworm, you don't like people. Okay. So you happen, frumkeit works for you. Well, if you're antisocial, it's easy to be. You know, you hate people. You're locked up in a room. It helps. It doesn't make you a tzaddik. It just makes you biologically different. Fine. So it's conducive for a lot of things. You also don't know probably how to love much. You also don't know how to be warm. You probably can't. You can't say madua pneichem royim hayom. Yosef was a passionate young fellow. There was a reason he had the nesirness he had. Right? So it's not about if a person is right or wrong. It's about sensitivity to people's journeys, sensitivities to people's challenges. Yumadav chav beis. Ein mamidin parnes alat zibur elim kein kuper shel shrotzim tluya loy me'achayrav. She'im yozuach daitoi noimar loy. Look at your back. That's what you mean, yeah? You don't create a leader unless there's a box of dead insects hanging down his back. So whenever he gets arrogant, you tell him, turn around. The Gemara says that's why Shaul didn't survive. He had no skeletons, no demons. David HaMelech wasn't a problem. Every time he got up to give a drasha, somebody said, who was your Alter Rebbe? She was Jewish, Bechlal. And that was it. Every time Moshe Rabbeinu got up to speak, they said, where did you get smicha? Where did you learn? Who was your Rosh Yeshiva? Para. Interesting. Where did you learn in Volozhin and Slabotka? Where did you learn in Mir? You learned by Para. Very nice. And that was it. You understand? There was no problem. So it saved. The Gemara says it saved them. Shaul's problem was he was good. Nobody had a file on Shaul. Everybody, they have files. On Shaul there was no file. He was a perfect kid. Huh? Okay, yeah, Baruch Hashem, with both of these leaders, there was no issue of Kuper Shel Shrotzim, not only Me'achayrav, but also Befonov. You didn't have to tell them, look back. You could tell them, look. Okay, that's what we were blessed with. Yeah, if only.
I think he's asking, how do you become yourself humble?
How do you become humble yourself? How do you become humble yourself? That's what pressing the grape, crushing the grape means. When you have honest people that you could talk to about who you are. And the main thing is you could speak to yourself. You could speak to your own honesty. He says, that's what it means to crush the grape. Crush the grape means not to allow the facades and to superficial husks to eclipse what is inside of it. So the grape needs to be pressed, and then you will find the wine. The wine is there. It's not a question if there's wine or not. Don't say you're uninspired, you're fake, you're horrible. That's not true. You have in yourself wine. And wine is misameach elakim va'anoshim. It's an avim esoteris l'smayach b'Hashem. The challenge is the wine is very, very concealed. So what do? We have to extract the wine. So he says, "V'heve shvar ruach b'fnei kol adam v'yu v'hev," and he explains, "V'nafshi ka'afar l'kol. We say at the end of Shemona Esrei, my soul should be like earth. Ka'skupa hanidreses. What's afar? Afar is a skupa hanidreses. When a person, the shvel of a door, when you step on the threshold of the door, what's the point here? You want the person to be crushed? No, you want the wine. A person has a foreskin, it's called an arla, that covers the heart. There's the arla that covers the bris. That they took care when you were 8 days old. But then there's a much, a thicker arla that's chayfefes al halev. The heart is unmoved. And the reason the heart is unmoved is because there's a foreskin that covers it. What does that foreskin look like? It can look like cynicism. It can look like pain. It can look like arrogance. It can look like addiction. It can look like fear. It can look like insecurity. But it's all an arla. So sometimes the person becomes very cold and cynical and angry or frustrated or annoyed, but it's really an arla. And the arla I have to remove. That's the klipa that I have to remove in order to extract the wine. The hainu. Now, you have to understand, he's speaking here to people, some of them who were deeply worked out people. The next paragraph is going to speak to a lower level of people. Even somebody who did not get affected by chatas norim. Chatas norim is translated as the youth of sinful, the sins of youth, sinful youths. Usually when it's in Svarim chatas norim, it refers to mistakes that people make in terms of their intimate lives, in terms of wasteful emission of seed, zera levatala, and similar situations where a person's intimate modesty is compromised in one way or another. That's called generally chatas norim. It's called youth because that's when, people's passions are usually raging and they're looking for ways to express it and they're frustrated. So he says if somebody engaged in that, it creates a foreskin. It creates a foreskin around the heart. Now even here, I think it's important to appreciate even these words, what he's saying here. How he speaks about chatas norim. In a very, very profound way. The problem is that it creates an arla that you won't know who you are anymore. Because whenever anybody has an easy outlet for loneliness and despair, rather than letting the emotion sit in them, it creates always an arla, hachayfefes al alev. Let me give an example in something a little more benign. Okay? If I'm stressed out, I'm busy, I'm stressed. So what do? I go to the pantry, I take something to eat. Even though I opened the pantry 60 seconds ago. But I hope that in the meantime something new was created. Somebody went shopping and maybe stocked it up. So even though I just went there 3 minutes ago and I know what the refrigerator has to offer, but you never know. Maybe Eliyahu Hanavi brought new food. You never know what happened. So therefore you open up and maybe I'll find something. Maybe my eyes will open up and I'll see some great bagel pizza that I haven't observed earlier or whatever. And I eat. What's the problem? The problem is fat? Yeah, that's a problem. The problem is carbs? Oh, of course a problem. The problem is being lethargic? Of course. The problem is it may not be healthy? Of course. But there's another issue. And sometimes that issue has much more consequences. And that is, I never have a chance to ask myself, why am I so stressed? Because I right away dulled the stress. I right away distracted myself with something that numbed the pain. And whenever you numb the pain, you could never ask yourself the question, why is the pain there? And therefore, how can I deal with it? Now, I'm not talking about sometimes when somebody's suffering from terrible migraine headaches. It's not a mitzvah to sit and wallow in pain, Khalila. There are painkillers for a reason. But I'm not talking about that type of pain. I'm talking about the pain that comes from a certain void. What are you being overwhelmed with? I'm not talking about physical, tangible pain. I'm talking about a pain that is more subtle. It's more emotional. It has to do with your self-perception. Whenever I run to something, but essentially it's a substance that just distracts me from it. Distracts me. And as we'll see, that was Noach's mistake. Noach came out from the flood. He saw a lot of pain and destruction. So what did he do? He got drunk. Everybody wants wine, but the question is, what are you going to use the wine for? This Maamer is going to distinguish between 3 types of wine. There's wine to distract. There's wine to make you joyous. And there's wine to break you down. Here he's talking about now yayin hamisameach. This is even food. You're talking about chatos neurim, it's a different type of food. The pleasure of intimacy is the greatest pleasure that Hashem created in the world. The taiva, the tainuk around physical relationships is one of the greatest pleasures in the world, which is why people always gravitate to it. When somebody, therefore, allows themselves to engage in chatas norim, emitting seed in a non-productive way, etc., or similar types of relationships, or non-relationships, imaginary relationships, what are they doing? They're activating a very, very profound source of pleasure, which always could numb a very deep source of pain. When you have a deep source of pain, you need a deep source of pleasure to distract you from it. Imagine you wouldn't go there, what would happen? You would have to actually sit with yourself and ask yourself, what's making me so lonely? What's making me so bored? Why do I feel so isolated? And then you can deal with it. When you don't, you create a foreskin that grows and grows and grows and grows. And that's what essentially habit and addiction is. And after years, you look in the mirror and all you know is your foreskin. You don't know anything else. That's the Arla HaChoifefes Al Halev. The Arla HaChoifefes Al Halev means that sometimes all there is to people is you're not speaking to a heart. You're speaking to a skin over the heart. And you know in relationships, sometimes you speak to somebody and you're not speaking to anybody. They have wise jokes. They're on WhatsApp all day. They know all the jokes, but you're not speaking to somebody. You're not speaking to a heart. You're speaking to a foreskin. I don't know how to say that nicely. How do you say it nicely, Rabbi Eliezer? Huh?
Shell.
You're speaking to a shell. Very good. A shell of a person. And this could be a very wise person, a sophisticated person, a wealthy person, educated person.
Or they're numb. Or they're numb.
Or they're numb, but you're speaking to a shell. You're not speaking to a heart. Once in a while you meet a person and they're present. The heart is present. The heart is fully present. Now, when you get up to God, are you present? Or if when you were 6 years old, the only way you dealt with God was through a foreskin. You could never open up your heart to Him. You had to close your heart to have a relationship with God, to remain religious or whatever it is. So you remain that forever. You remain there forever. He actually never touches you. The you. That's what he's talking about. The Arla HaChoifefes Al Halev. So he says, even if loy pogam v'nitma b'chatas nurim mamish, then I know there's an Arla. Mikol makoim tzarichu lamul Arlas liboy, k'masher kasav v'maltemas Arlas levavchem. What is the Arla? Dainu masher liboy mboyer u'misavel l'moisrus. For him, this was a serious Arla. Your heart is on fire to extra things that you don't need in life. Moisrus. Moisrus means all types of cravings and addictions that are not necessary for a person to live a meaningful life, and they're on passion to it. They'll see even a meal, whatever it is. This means, basically, they're being distracted. The tragedy here is, gesundheit, enjoy it, but you know what happens? You don't know who you are anymore. You don't know the lakus that's in you. It's completely eclipsed. Even a thin membrane shall b'chinas oid hapriya. The Gemara says, Hamol v'loy para ki'ilu loy mol. Those who know about Mila, you know there's two layers. There's the real foreskin, that's number one. But then there's priya. Priya is a thin membrane, which you may say is not very meaningful. But he says here, no. It also blocks. When you're spiritually sensitive to who you are, even a krum dak, even a little tiny membrane called the Ohr Priya, which will soon be associated with Pari, as we'll see, creates a blockage. If you're not, for example, for some people, a deceptive conversation is called honest, and for other people, even an honest conversation, if it's not fully honest, it's deceptive. If we had a conversation where we were very loyal to each other, and then something happens and we meet, and you say, Sinishdas. There was a yeshiva bacha, a Lubavitcher yeshiva bacha, who went in on yechidus to the Lubavitcher Rebbe once. So the Rebbe asked him a question. So he answered. So the Rebbe looks at his bacha and he says, listen to this. He says, Die Daled Ames da, seinen Daled Ames von Emes. The 4 cubits here are truthful 4 cubits. Geh arois, nimm herab deine Levushim von Sheker, und danach komm zurück herein. Go outside, remove your garments of lies, and once you're stripped from those garments, you can come back here. These words you're saying don't belong in these Daled Ames. There's a sensitivity that a real person of truth has, even to a tiny little krum dak. In a very intimate relationship, subtleties are more important than dense things. The Maggid said, L'Kutei Torah, he heard from the Maggid, that machshavas zoros of tzaddikim poigmim harbe yoser me'averes chamuras shel rishayim. Lashon L'Kutei Torah from the Maggid. Machshavas zoros of tzaddikim are far more painful than heavy sins of rishayim. You know why? You know why? Because if we're not in an intimate relationship, we're not in an intimate relationship. When you're in a very, very intimate relationship, the subtle distortion is much more painful because you gave over your whole soul. And when you gave over your whole soul, and then there's a little distortion, it becomes very, very significant. It becomes very powerfully painful. So he says the Jew who really understands this, he's sensitive even to the smallest distraction of the full relationship. So a Jew is divine, full of bubbly, fermented passion and wine and simcha and avat Hashem. The moment I allow myself to fall prey to the klippah, to the arla, even to moisris, basically I allow myself to indulge in something that's not nurturing my true divine self. For one person it's nothing, it's a joke. This is already a mitzvah. It's already a mitzvah. It's already a mitzvah, big deal, right? But for another person knows that this was a
desecration of the
a
relationship.
desecration of the relationship. Eating falafel with tchina and hummus flowing from your mustache. You ever saw that? With the balls and the salad all over the place. Right? Some people call it Einik Shabbos. Call it Einik Shabbos. There was a big chassid, his name was Rabbi David Haradoker, before the war. So he was once talking about this. So somebody said, why are you denigrating it? What are you denigrating? To eat Machali Shabbos, you have a special heichel in Gan Eden. To eat food with passion, you have a special heichel in Gan Eden. He says, Emes. He says, Emes. You have a place in Elam Haba, but it's a stinkdarten. But it's smelly over there. So what's wrong with eating falafel and tchina? Nothing wrong. But what happens if a chassid under the chuppah takes out a falafel? Yeah? And starts eating it. Yeah? There's something off. Why? Or what about a chassid under the chuppah? Harayat Mekadashis, I got a text. 1 second. He starts checking his text. People do it all the time. They're talking to you. Well, wait. But if it's the middle of Harayat Mekadashis, there's something very off. Why? You didn't do anything wrong. You sent a text. You checked an email. That's what Jews do all day. Because you do it all day because there's nothing going on in your life. But this is a moment of intimacy. When it's a moment of intimacy, it's a desecration of intimacy. It may not be a big sin. It's a small, not a sin at all. It's a desecration of intimacy. If you understand the heart is on that level of love with God, so even a tiny little arla, not chatas norim, he calls it moisris, it ultimately blocks it. So he's talking here about that Jew who challenges himself to go through the grape and be able to extract the wine. Okay, as we'll soon see in the next paragraph, he says, and then there's a whole other category of people who can't relate to what I'm saying. So that's what the Maggid said that machshavas zoros of tzaddikim are poigim more than. Yeah.
Oh, that was the Ohr Chaim. That's what linked us to the Ohr Chaim idea. That was,
Yeah,
was that from the Zohar, the Ohr Chaim? Was that from?
That's from the Baal HaTanya and Tanya Perik Lamed. How could somebody be humble in the presence of every person? L'chayda, you know the person is, his behavior is far more. He does things you would never do in your life, and it's true. You would not do it. He says the answer is: do you have his struggles? Do you have his heart? Do you have his experience? It's a sensitivity to truth. It's a sensitivity simply to truth. There was a poet who once said, all envy is really ignorance. All envy is really ignorance. Ignorance. Sfas Emes says, V'havedonis kol ha'adam l'kaf schos, literally means kol ha'adam, every person. He says, V'havedonis kol ha'adam means, whenever you look at a person, you have to see kol ha'adam. You have to know the totality of the person. Totality means their past, their present, their future, their genetic makeup, their background, their struggles, their challenges. This doesn't make them right. Doesn't make a person right. Just puts me in a space where I don't sit on a throne of holier than thou. You know the holier than thou attitude? I'm the good guy and you're all the bad guys. You know? But I'm holier. If I would be in your shoes, I may have done exactly the same thing and maybe even far worse. I think this is extremely important, especially today. One sees, this is out all of history. You know, people make different choices, and some of these choices are very painful, and some of these choices are wrong, and some of these choices may be destructive to themselves. And it's important to be there for them. But when you become judgmental, you ultimately are in you're in the wrong space, number one. And number two, you also undermine what you really want to do, because it's very hard for people to accept words that come from a place of judgmentalism. Because if I feel that you're attacking me, I'm gonna put up a bullet vest. I'm gonna put up a bulletproof vest. I'll put on gear. I'm not gonna listen to you. It's just the nature of people. It becomes an issue of natzchanas. So if you actually really care about what they're doing that's wrong, the less judgmental you are, the far more hope there is that you can actually influence somebody. Because you're coming from a place of caring, of love, of affection. So that's what he explains, how you could be mekayim v'havei shvar ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam. And then he adds something else that's also very profound. He says, ask yourself another question. You may not have those struggles, but those mitzvahs or avedas that for you are hard, where you do have a struggle on that level, isn't it true that you also transgress? He says, you don't have this particular issue, right? But those areas where you do have a struggle, when you have a struggle and the magnitude of that struggle, he said, is it not true that you also fall? So not only are you not holier, you're actually the same. It's a powerful topic.
That's all this Sfas Emes?
No, this is Tanya Lamed, Perik Lam. Sfas Emes teaches the word kol ha'adam. Kol ha'adam. You have to see the whole person.
Not to belabor the point, but the idea, it was the Maggid who said this idea about the tzaddikim, that how did he phrase it again? I'm sorry to belabor.
L'kut Torah Baal HaTanya. There's a L'kut Torah here.
Oh, I don't want to distract you.
Okay. It's a sensitive art. It's the Gemara, Talmud Chacham shenimtzer revav al bigdoi chayav mis. Right? You know the Gemara. Revav means a Talmud Chacham who has a stain on his garment. It's chayav mis. In other words, if I'm not wearing, a white tuxedo, I'm coming from, I'm a coal miner, or I sell ice cream all day, and there's a stain on my shirt, it's not a problem. But when everything is so perfect, a small revav could be far more damaging than a big revav. So you have the word of the Kotzker. Talmud Chacham shenimtzer revav al bidei chayav misa. You know why? Because it's only one revav. That's what the Kotzker Rebbe said. It's only one. That's why chayav misa. In other words, he's self-conscious. He's busy with his how he looks. Okay, that's the Kotzker Rebbe. You understand? The problem is chayav misa because he only has one revav. Yeah. Well, I only one. Okay, that's not a bad word. Yeah. Okay, I could show you later after look. So that's the nekuda. When you have a tiny particle of sand in a very refined lens, it's really disruptive for the vision. If you don't have a refined lens, so you have a little dust, right? But when you have a particle of, it could be a particle of dust, it's insignificant. when you have it on such a sensitive lens, it could sometimes blur and compromise the vision. So here he's talking about somebody who's sensitive even to Ohr HaPriya. Ohr HaPriya is the second foreskin, the second membrane on the bris, on the millah. In other words, there shouldn't be any masach, any separation whatsoever, in order to get to the wine, that is hidden in the grape. So the Asar HaMashkim has this dream. And the dream is there's a vine. The vine is Neshama Yisrael. And every Neshama is a grape. The grape has wine. And wine is the love and the capacity to be able to be Mesameach. To be Sameach in Hashem. And to rejoice with God. But, like wine, it's completely eclipsed by the grape. And one ought to press and crush the grape in order to extract the joyous beverage which we call the wine. And that's the b'china of a hevei shfal ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam, not that you should belittle others, but that the person himself should be able to be extremely humble and allow himself to remove all of the foreskins, all of the arlas, the shells that cover the heart, which may not sometimes be from chatas neurim necessarily, because he's talking here even a person who is beyond that, but even liboy boyer misavel moiseris arlas lavavch. So he continues. Val yedei kain ve'etin esakois al kaf paroi. What's the next step? I squeezed out the wine. I crushed the grape and squeezed out the wine. I filled it up in a cup and I place it on the palm of paroi. K'moshe kasu. On a spiritual level, the meaning of this is a pasuk in Yeshaya. Yeshaya Navi says, Perek Mem Tes, and I'll quote the whole pasuk: Hein al kapayim chakoisich choymoisayich negdi tamid. Al kapayim, on my hands, on the palms of my hands, chakoisich, I have engraved you. On my hands I have engraved you. In other words, you're always with me. I'll never ever forget you. On the palm of, you always see the palm of your hands. You see it often. You are engraved. Chakoisich, on the palm of my hands. Ve'etin esakois al kaf paroi, we'll soon see who Paroi is. But on the hands of Paroi, my cup is there. Uksiv, there's another pasuk. And this is a pasuk in Iyov, towards the end of Iyov. Iyov Lamed Vav. Al kapayim kisa oir. He quotes the whole pasuk. Uksiv al kapayim kisa oir vayitzav aleha b'mav gia. It's a hard pasuk to understand. Al kapayim. So you see what he does. In Miketz you have the word kaf paroi. So you found in Yeshaya al kapayim chakoisich, and in Iyov, because the whole Tanakh is always interconnected. Especially once, on every level, Pshat, and especially once you hit Remez and Drush, and never mind Soid, it's all interconnected, especially when you have similar words. Al kapayim kisa oir vayitzav aleha b'mavgia. So the classic interpretation of Mefarshim is that al kapayim, on the kapayim, are on the clouds. Nisal, we say in Eicha, Rashi says, Nisal levavenu el kapayim. Al kapoyim. Rashi says because of ktana looks like the pasuk says in Malachim that of ktana kechaf ish, a small cloud is like the palm of a person's hand, or the Mitzudah says it's like a kippah, a yamelke, a dome on the heads of people. So al kapayim, on the clouds, kisa oir, he concealed his reign. Yoiro malkash, we say in Shemona Esra, oir is rain. The rain is embedded, is concealed in the clouds, and then by Yitzav Aleha, he commands the rain to come out, b'mavgia. Begia always means tefillah, right? Vayivga b'makom is tefillah. Through tefillah, Rashi says, the lover of the generation prays and has the rain come out. So al kapayim, on the clouds, which is called kapayim, is kisa oir, the rain is blocked or covered, Vayitzav Aleha, and then he commands on it. He commands the rain to emerge, b'mavgia, through prayer. So he says as follows: Mavgia zu tefillah. Ki b'chines paroi b'kedusha zelu umazeh. K'moishe paroi b'klipu klipa kosher. Kach zelu umazeh paroi b'kedusha b'chines gili elokusa yizbarach. Loshen priya v'hizgalus dvar Hashem. There's two paras, a tale of two paras. There's para on one level, and then there's para on another level. Zelu umazeh. The word para comes from the word priya. Priya is right, parua roish, parua l'shimtza. Priya by circumcision. Priya means to open up. To open up, to disclose, to expose, to reveal. So Parai on one level is the king of Egypt. Parai in Kedusha, Zelo Mazah means complete revelation, complete openness. Gili Alakusi is Baruch. In other words, the wine emerges from the grape. Al Yedei, how does the cup get to the hand of Parai? Through the butler. What is the butler? Mashkim, Shobchines Kana. That was the windpipe. Because the koil, the voice that comes out and emerges through the kana, through the windpipe, arouses the kavana to be sameach, to celebrate Hashem through davening. The Ramashkim says, I took the cup of wine and I placed it on the hands of Parai, kibchines kana hanal. The Sar HaMashkim, which represents the kana, the link between the brain and the heart, between the water and the fire. In other words, the minister, the butler, who, so to speak, is responsible to bring the mayim, to bring the drink, and here in this case, the wine, the simcha, he leads up the cup of wine, he leads up the arousal of love, even beyond the comprehension of the human being, to the state of para. What is he saying here? He's giving the spiritual remez of the dream of the Sar HaMashkim. After explaining that the element of water is in the brain, the element of fire is in the heart, and then you have the windpipe and the lungs that are responsible to create the link between the water and the fire, through the ruach, through the ear, through the energy, through the ear, through the oxygen, that the reya and the kana absorb, that the person inhales and ultimately comes down to the heart through the lungs, and then travels throughout the whole body. So that's physically. Spiritually, what it represents is that a person's avodah, to link the mayim and the eish, to link the fire and the water. So he's discussed before, you have mayim is ein mayim el Torah. There's also the element of kana, he said, there's oisius ha-Torah, knei chachma, knei bina, but it's also the place of koil, sound. Sound, it's Sfarim say, koil ma'ored ha-kavana. Sound arouses the kavana. So the Sar HaMashkim is the one who what? Who takes the grape. And the Sar HaMashkim is the one who squeezes the grape. And he produces the grape into wine. And this wine he puts into a cup. And this cup he lifts up. He places it on the hand of Parai. Parai represents Gilui Elikus. In other words, that the Ohr HaPriya is gone. You remove the Arlas Halev, you remove the foreskin. This is Parai in Kedusha. Everything in Klippa has a source ultimately in Kedusha, and the higher something is, the lower it falls. So sometimes you have the highest spiritual energy. When it gets destructive, when it gets distorted, the distortion is far more intense than something that's not such lofty energy. That's why you can have this paradox that Parai and Kedusha is such a lofty idea, and that's why when it's distorted, like a rebellious child, is sometimes the greatest gift to humanity. As long as you can channel and harness the rebellion. Sometimes somebody who is anxious, somebody who suffers from deep depression, if he knows how to deal with it, he is probably could become one of the most powerful people, because all energy, all emotion is energy. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion. The question is where that energy is going. So if I could find the proper way to harness that energy, the fact that this person is so depressed means they're very sensitive, they're very profound, they're dealing with a lot of anxiety, they don't take things for granted, they're open to profound ideas, they're very perceptive, things penetrate very deeply. So when this person could convert that energy and find a redemptive outlet for it, in other words, trace it back to Parai in its source, then it's the other way around. That which fell lowest also goes to the highest space. I mean, this is a big yesod in the shit of the Baal HaTanya always. It has to do with what we spoke earlier with toyu and tikkun, why we have to eat food, etc. That which is inferior is really superior. That which you struggle with most usually contains your deepest light. It's very difficult, though, to see it that way, because the head, you have to survive it. You have to survive it. If you could survive it, you'll do well. If you can survive it, then you'll do well. Not only you'll do well, there's an expression, right? In halachas svarim, in lo yoyil lo yazik. If something doesn't help, at least it won't be mazik. In chinuch, you have to say the opposite. Im lo yazik lo yoyil. If he's not a mazik, probably nothing will come out of him. In other words, somebody who always behaves, okay, he'll be a good guy. He'll pay, he'll pay his taxes and pay his dues to the shul. When you see hezek, this you have to invest in. When you see somebody who's rebellious, I'm not saying this is a mitzvah to turn all children into everybody sees what they want to see. So, whenever you have an issue with something that's mata, it has to do with gavoya. Even a para. You have para in l'umazah, but you have para in kedusha. In the source, this doesn't mean para down here is holy. It means that there's an energy that can get very distorted, but in its source, it's really sublimated. Para in kedusha is a complete space of gilui, of exposure. Miloshem priya, oira priya. The Sar HaMashkim therefore wants to get the grape to para. He wants it to be on the hands of para. What's the Sar HaMashkim in a person's avoida? That's the kona and the reya, the windpipe, which connects the liquid, the mashkim, the liquid, the element of water with the element of fire, and cools off the element of water. The kona is also connected to the voice, because koil ma'oirid hakavana. So the Sar HaMashkim, the kona, takes the grape and crushes the grape, and during davening brings out the wine. Misameach elakim va'anoshim, because koil ma'oirid hakavana. When a person davens loud with a koil, when a person speaks, sings, davens with a voice, that itself arouses kavanah, it arouses concentration, it arouses meditation. So the Sar HaMashkim causes the grape to be crushed and produce the wine, to be megala the yayin ha'mesameach elakim va'anoshim, and to lift it up on the hands of Parai. On your hand you have engraved me, and al kapayim, as he brings from Iyov, vayitzav aleh b'mavgiya zu tefillah. Al kaf Parai is the tefillah that the Sar HaMashkim through the koil is ma'orer the kavana, and therefore the aver transcends even the hasaga of the person, because the wine emerges from the grape and it's not concealed anymore. That's step one of this interpretation. Removing the foreskin, that's his dream. He has a dream to remove the arla, the shell that blocks the inner wine of the soul. And not only that, once I have the wine, it ultimately reaches the space of para where there's complete openness and there's no arla anymore, because the wine emerges, and in a person's personal avodah, it's the kana, the koil that's ma'orer, the kavana, that the wine should emerge, the inner ava should come out, and it shouldn't remain concealed, because that kavana means you're interested, you're engaged, there's a simcha during the davening, because there's a kavana during the davening. And the koil is ma'orer, the kavana, that's the Sar HaMashkim. Not every person is capable of drinking this type of wine. This is called yayin ha'mesameach. Rak yishrei leiv. Yeah, for this you have to have a straight heart. K'maisha kasav uli yishrei leiv simcha. Simcha, this type of simcha is only for yishrei leiv. Right? We say Ohr Zarua Latzadik Friday night. Ohr Zarua Latzadik uli yishrei leiv simcha. And the yishrei leiv simcha means simcha could be leiv means you have a leiv yashar. Your leiv is straight, and therefore there's not so many knots, so you could find this simcha. What's the yishrei leiv? Somebody who always nurtured themselves. So even though they also, everybody has an arla. Everyone needs a bris. Everybody has arla saleiv. Everyone's heart goes different places, and they could become terrible or subtle distractions of your yayin ha'mesameach. But this is already a lighter foreskin, and the person removes it, and that's what the Sar HaMashkim does. The person starts davening, and he's in, he's connected. All he needs is koil. That's it. Right? The signs in davening, Asur ledaber b'shas hatfilah kriyas haTorah. There was once a shul, I saw a sign, Asur leispalel b'shas hadibur. Which madrega are you on? If you're davening, I say, Asur ledaber b'shas hatfilah. For some people, it's not, they're not speaking in the middle of davening. Right? They're davening in the middle of speaking, so what's the problem? I was once in a shul, so somebody was making noise. I went over and I said, maybe you could speak a little low. Or not. He says, what do you think I came here for? To be quiet, I could stay home with my wife. She doesn't talk to me, I don't talk to her. I came here to talk. So what do you think I came here for? A Yid came to the Chayz of Lublin and he said he has machshavas zaras during davening. He said it Eren Skrata. He said it very seriously. He meant it. He said, what do you think I come here for? The Yid came to the Chayz and he says, it's terrible. He says, what? He says, I daven and machshavas zaras coming the whole time. Machshavas zaras coming in the middle of davening. He says, no. Machshavas zaras, the pshat, it's an alien thought. He says, by you the thought is not alien. You come to shul, you have machshavas. The tefillah is the machshavas zara. Your tefillah is the machshavas zara. This was a very important idea because if you don't identify this, your struggle is a different struggle. If you think you're davening and you're having machshavas zaras, that's a shtickle madrega. It means you're in a relationship. You're trying to connect, and something is bought. No, you're not trying to. You don't even know what it means to connect. You didn't start davening, so your problem is not machshavas zaras. Your problem is you have to leave and learn that you're capable of a relationship. The Chayzer wasn't trying to make fun of him. These were not people who did that. They weren't insecure that they had to put down people who came to them. You're dealing with people who were very profound and holy. He wanted to explain to the person the issue. Your problem is not machshavas zaras. Your problem is your tefillah is machshavas zara. You don't know. You didn't begin the relationship. That's the distinction. The struggle of the Sara Mashkim Sachakel is koil moired hakavana. You get into the koil moired kavana. For that, there has to be a shtickle kavana, and the koil brings out the kavana. So that's liyishrei leiv. Liyishrei leiv, that there's already the grape is lends itself to be opened. The grape lends itself to be crushed. And then the wine will come out, and the wine will not only come out, it'll be placed on the hands, al kapayim chakoisich, vayitzav aleh b'mavgiya zu tefillah. It's interesting how he brings the psukim here. That's the koyach hatfillah, the koyach of the saramashkim, to be ma'oider, the ava, and the ava explodes. So this is, Alter Rebbe says, this is for the Jew, the yishrei leiv, and what he's looking for is simcha. So you come to me, I'm telling you, this is what you need. You need to have koil. You need to have a saramashkim. You have to get rid of the arlas halev. And then the wine will flow and it won't stop flowing. With wine? But what about somebody who's broken? This is somebody who really is not broken, but the person is not tied up. Elamai, we all have foreskins. Godliness is concealed by everybody. So mainly he needs that dosage of help to be able to get it out. Because even a little masach, there's no big blockages, but the part is, to experience intimacy with God, you can't have any blockages. And even a subtle one is going to disturb the intimacy. The Gemara says, Hu bebigdai, v'hi bebigda, yoitzi v'yitin ksuva. Right? If he, talking about a husband and a wife, if he insists that he remains in his bgadim, in his clothes, and she remains in her clothes, in other words, there's no intimacy completely, so the Gemara says, Yoitzi v'yitin ksuva. If this is his requirement, this is not a marriage. You could tell him to get divorced. So the Baal HaTanya teaches that it goes also on a Jew and Hashem. And look at the Torah. Hu bevigda v'hi bevigda, Yoitzi v'yitin ksuva. If you relate to God and you refuse to get rid of your wardrobes, your clothes, it's not a marriage. A relationship has to be raw. It has to be vulnerable. It has to be without garments, without cloaks. I'm talking about psychological garments. In other words, if you're fake on the outside, you're going to be fake on the inside. There's no such a thing that there's not one person in the world you're honest with, but with your Rebbeinu Shalom, you're going to be honest. It doesn't work that way. If you're dishonest with people, you're dishonest with God. If you're dishonest with God, you're dishonest with people. But sometimes people think they'll have a relationship with Hashem that's real. If there's not one person you can have a relationship with, not one, How can you have a relationship with Hashem? It doesn't work. Hu bevigda v'hi bevigda. So we're talking here about a person, there's no huge blockage, but there's even subtle blockages are blockages. He doesn't want any begadim. So in Mela, you have your Asad Hamashkim has a dream. But then there's somebody, the relationship has to be created. It's not that there's a powerful relationship, but there's four types of blockage. So now the question is how we get the kavana, the avid, to explode. In other words, I'm not looking how to get rid of the machshava zara. I'm looking how to turn davening not into a machshava zara. I'm trying to understand how it begins. That's the next step. For this, you don't need yayin hamasameach. You're not capable yet of wine that's going to bring you joy. You still need a different type of wine. Always the sign for this is somebody whose chatas na'urim, in other words, their whole intimate life may have become defiled as a result of various behaviors. It's not his fault. He can't rejoice with God during davening. Not because he doesn't want to. He doesn't know what it is. What does it mean? How do you rejoice with somebody and how do you rejoice with God? There are so many thoughts that confuse him, so therefore the davening hebt sich nicht an. There's no cheftze of tefillah even. There's so much confusion, there's so much mavalbalas. Now mavalbalas doesn't mean that I'm davening and a thought comes in. It means I can't even create the mindset of going into an intimate moment. You have a person, they don't know how to enter a mindset of intimacy. I'm talking about spiritual intimacy, physical as well. But it's a mindset. I can't even go into that. You know, it's like a person who never ever stops texting. You ever sit? Somebody comes. A person came to see me the other day. They sit down. So I look at them, and they say 1 minute. They go like this. I'm like, okay. Around 20 seconds later, I'm sorry, 1 second. And for the next while, and I was looking at it, and it was really a very interesting study, because people don't realize this on themselves. They can't go into any. There's no space. There's no space. You have a relationship with anybody, with your child, yeah, with your spouse, yeah, with God, yeah. There's no space in which you're not distracted. So this is today. The whole life revolves around this. These little towns in Lyozhny and Belarus, they didn't have iPhones, if I'm not mistaken. Even though they say that the British said that they were digging and they excavated wires, and they want to say that 2,000 years ago they already had wires. So the Israelis responded that they excavated in Tzfas, and they found no wires, which means 3,000 years ago they had wireless communication. But nonetheless, machshavas zaras don't have to come from without. The person is not even in a state of a relationship. That's the challenge. For this is another eitz. There's another type of wine, and this is called in Tanakh yayin hameshaker. There's yayin hamesameach and there's yayin hameshaker. Yayin hamesameach is wine that brings joy. You know what yayin hameshaker means? Yayin that makes a person drunk. Yayin hameshaker. So if somebody would stop by this line, the Maamer would say, okay, the Baal HaTanya says, if the relationship is not working and you can't daven, right? It's just time to not just drink, to get inebriated and to get smashed. That's classic taking something out of context, because we'll soon see what yayin hameshakir is. But I'm just showing you how somebody could quote a line and say, this is the lesson. The lesson is if nothing is working, just get stoned. But everybody understands, even Bashkafet Hashem, that that's never a solution, because what does that do? You'll sober up and you'll be depressed again, right? They say that in the British Parliament, somebody once told Winston Churchill that he's a drunk, which was not far from truth. So he responded, he says, that's true, but you're a fool. The difference is, I drink, tomorrow I'm sober. You wake up tomorrow, you're still a fool. So there's no difference. So, yayin hameshaker, what does it help? It's going to get you drunk. So he says, for this, there's a pasuk. Mashakasav, the pasuk says in Mishlei, this is Mishlei Lamed Aleph, the last Perek, I think, in Mishlei, the same chapter like Eishes Chayil Meyimtza V'Rachiv B'nei Michra. Shlomo HaMelech says there, he says, aristocrats, melachim, roiznim, nesichim, princes don't drink. They don't drink because they don't want to lose their insanity. But Shlomo HaMelech says, who drinks? He says, Tnu Shecher La'ovid. Give Shecher. Shecher is huh?
Honey drink, honey.
Yeah, very strong alcoholic honey med. Yeah. Tnu Shecher La'ovid. Give this alcoholic beverage to somebody who's lost. V'yayin L'marei nefesh. You know who you got to give wine to? Bitter mention. Bitter souls. Yishta, let him drink. V'yishkach reishai. And he'll forget his poverty for a moment. That's what Shlomo HaMelech says. Yayin, you got to give not to aristocrats and to royal people. You got to give it la'ovid, somebody who's lost. Marei nefesh. Huh? Yishkach reishai, you know, he'll forget his poverty, his deprivation.
You said for a moment.
No.
For a moment.
His poverty.
Just forget it for a moment.
Then he'll have to drink again, yeah. V'yishkach reishai, no, he'll forget his poverty. When you're drunk, you're on top of the world, yeah. V'yishkach reishai. V'yishkach reishai. That's what Shlomo HaMelech says. Al pi pshat, what is he saying? He's saying people who are successful don't have to drink. People who are happy, what do they have to get smashed for? If you're an oivid, you're a loser. Your life is bitter and horrible. What's the eitzah? The eitzah is you hit the bottle. You hit the bottle, that's what you do. This is what we call alcoholism. Shlomo HaMelech introduced it in Mishlei Lamed Aleph. You're a frustrated soul. You need a distraction. You need to numb the pain. What do? You drink. Yishta v'yishkach reishai. You'll forget your poverty. Ashena Maisa. The Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, once went to Moscow for a political situation in the Tsarist government that he was dealing with. It was a very serious situation. He finished late at night. He came home to the hotel, and he turns to his son. His discipline with his time was legendary. Call his work on himself. He turns to his son, who later succeeded in the Rayatz, the sixth Chabad Rebbe, and he says, "Lo me fabrengen. I want to fabreng with you." For his son, that was a priceless gift because it was very rare. His father would tell him things that he usually wouldn't tell him. So he says, "Geh bring a butel mashke. Go bring a mashke. We'll say l'chaim." It was late at night at Moscow, so he went. Look, all the stores were closed. All the stores were closed. But he knew his father wanted it. There's nothing he wouldn't do for his father. So he went everywhere. Looked and looked and looked. He couldn't find anything. Right before he go home, as he was on the way back to the hotel, he sees a Russian drunkard, an absolute shikar, holding a flash, a bottle of mashke, smashed. And there was still plenty of mashke in the bottle. And he's holding it. And he's dancing, he's walking, he's swaying. So he goes over to him and he says, "How much is this bottle worth in the store?" He said, 20 ruble. So I'll give you 50 ruble, give me the bottle. He says, no. 100 ruble, 200 ruble. There was nothing he wanted, his father wanted. He went up and up. He offered him all the money he had in his wallet. He had a lot of money. All the money for the fleshel mashke. And he said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the Rayat says, what's the Havana? I give you the money. Tomorrow morning, you could buy not one bottle. You could buy so much money. He says, how much money are you going to give me? 1,000 ruble. Yeah. What can I buy with 1,000 ruble? I can't even buy one house in Moscow. He says, aber mit der Bottle is ganz Moskva meiner. But with this bottle, the whole Moscow belongs to me. Ganz Moskva is meine, the whole Moscow. So he comes back to the hotel. His father says, "Nu, es gebracht Maschke." So ich gebracht Maschke, ich gebracht a Wort. I didn't bring Maschke, but I brought a Wort. Yishte v'yishke chreish. You'll see what the Wort is. It's not a Wort. So we understand the pasuk, you drink to forget your tzaras. But Shlomo HaMelech says to do it. So the Baal HaTanya says Shlomo HaMelech wasn't telling people that if life gets tough, it's time to hit the bar. That's not the advice. In Mishlei, he's not saying, I'm a marei nefesh, go drink. He's talking about something much profounder. That you're not capable of yayin ha-mesameach, what you need is yayin ha-meshak. What is this? Maamer azal gabe harugei bezdin. This is a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Mem Gimel, I think, when people get executed by Bezdin. So the Gemara, you mashkin oisei kois yayin koidem amisa. You know this. Before a Jew got a death penalty, They used to give him a whole cup of wine, and yes, then their wine is not our wine. Their wine you had to dilute in water, right? It's called, you had to be moizig, the koisin. You know how much you had to dilute it? Huh? 2/3. You understand? Why? Because if you drunk the wine, you ever drank 96% of alcohol, 1 cup of it, and you're done. You're done for the week. You're done for the week. There was a Yid who lived where I grew up. He was an old Russian Jew. His name was Rabbi Maamer. And he used to drink every Shabbos, maybe every day. The old Russians, they drink a lot. That's how they dealt with communism and Stalin for many, many years. So they said he was an old man. He was in his 90s, and he didn't stop. Shabbos upstairs by Kiddush, it's 96% alcohol. So I once asked somebody from the mishpacha. I said, I don't understand how does he get away with this? His doctor lets him do it. So he said, you don't understand. He goes to his doctor and they drink together. He said, they drink together. It's wonderful, right? So we say a cup of wine, what's going to help you? You're killing somebody, a cup of wine is not going to help you. We drink Mascati da Asti. Even if you're drinking a Merlot, so what are you drinking already? 12% alcohol? It's the Chalitze Litzonas. You have to understand the Yayin Koidem HaMiseh here, it knocked you out. B'meila, Sheyuchal Lizbert, Kadesha Titarev Daitil of the Sheyuchal Lizbert Tzara Misa. They didn't want that the person should have to deal with the tsar of death in a conscious way. So he was inebriated, and then they killed him. This is the halacha Masechta Sanhedrin. You didn't just kill a person. You didn't want, you should be consciously alert to the pain. So they used to knock him out through the yayin. Wie kommt es da? So he's going to explain this whole halacha exists in Nigla. It also exists in psychology, emotions, spirituality. V'lachein b'krishma shel amita gam kein misha reitz lekabel of dalad Mrs. Bezdin k'misha kasav b'nusach harizal. The Arizal has a different krishma than many people. And familiar with krishma nusach harizal? First of all, he puts in Ribono Shel Olam at the beginning, you forgive everybody. Hareini Michael. It's a beautiful krishma he has. In the middle of krishma he has a Yehiratzen. The Yehiratzen is Shim Chatasti Avisi Pashati Pagamti Lefanecha Ba'ois Yud Shel Shem Yudkei V'nes Chayavti Alav Skila. So I should be atoned for that. And then he goes through Sreifa, Ois Hei, he goes through Herig, and he goes through Chenek, and he goes through different mitzvahs that are associated with these spiritual penalties. So he says, this Gemara in Sanhedrin, you got to drink before Mrs. Bezdin, also is Krishma Shalamita. Okay, so now if you stop here the Maamer, you think what he's telling you is in the middle of Krishma, you got to start drinking. So he says, you have to understand in Pagamti, Ba'is Yud, V'nes Chayavti, Skila. What's Pshat Skila? Skila is a hard thing to digest, especially today's day and age. Skilla means stoning to death. He says, that's not what skill is. That's the practical, physical skill. Skilla begins on another level. What's skilla? Skilla means your heart becomes a rock. It says they used to throw a rock on a stone on the person's heart. The person died. Pshat is, spiritually, skilla means the person becomes a rock. I am a rock. Right? Mm-hmm. And a rock feels no pain. And an island never cries. A rock feels no pain. Liboy metumtum, you're plugged. You're a rock. You're unmoved. Unmoved by anything or anybody. You're not even moved by yourself. That's a condition of skilla. What does it mean to be burnt? What does it mean to be burnt? To be burnt means you're an addict. You have no control over your impulses and passions. You get burnt up. You're not a person anymore. You're completely controlled by your habits, instincts, impulses, and addictions. And your taivas are sometimes to things that are forbidden and destructive. The best words. Every person knows their soul. I was once at a recovery Shabbaton in Boca, so a big addict gets up and he says, we know us. Yada inish benafshe. We know us. Nobody knows us like we know us. The grammar was part of the drama. We know us. Yada inish benafshe. Zoy siyetza yutzer sheyuchel kabel of dalad Mrs. Bezdin b'shleimus. Yishtebchines kois yayin hana. Shlomo Melech is not stam talking, get drunk. No, he's giving an eitzah. When you're a spiritual royal man, you don't need this wine. But when somebody is broken, when somebody's heart is made up of stone, how can you be moved by davening? You're not moved by anything. When somebody is in a state of addiction, sreifa. What's hereg? Remember what hereg is? You don't have a head. Beheading. We're talking about, what does beheading mean? You don't got a head anymore. Or what's chenek? Chenek is strangulation. What is that? You create a chatzitza between the head and the heart. The highway, the passage between the head and the heart is interrupted. The ear can't pass. The energy can't pass. There's no relationship anymore. These are Dalit Mrs. Bezdin emotionally. It doesn't begin physically, it begins emotionally. And you could learn the whole Torah that way. When the Torah says this Averi Yemechuyev Skila, this is a very important idea in Chassidus. We read it, you did this sin, I'll teach you a lesson. I'm going to stone you to death. I'll burn you alive. No. That's you starting from the lowest space. You have to understand something else. When you do this, on an emotional level, the heart gets stoned. And I don't mean stoned here as stoned. I mean stoned as stoned.
Not in a good way.
That's also not in a good way, but you mean in an exciting way.
Obviously.
A certain Avedis, it makes you a sreifa. Before the punishment, you punished yourself. Skill of sreifa begins spiritually, begins psychologically. All halacha is a physical manifestation of what already happened. Punishments in Torah are basically exposing what already happened internally. That energy comes already into you. And then it's reflected in a physical fashion. In other words, it's not that it starts off with Bezdin. God says if they do this, Bezdin has to do this. All halachas of Torah is a description of the internal manual of how the human and Jewish psyche works. Certain sins don't do skilla, they do sreifa. Some of them do hedek, some of them do chenek. Some of them don't do either. So when we're dealing with this type of person, you have to give them to drink before. What's this wine? This is not yayin ha-mesameach, this is yayin ha-meshaker. What's yayin ha-meshaker? We touch meshaker from the word shikr. You get drunk. He touches here yayin ha-meshaker in the hemshech. Yayin ha-meshaker means wine that allows you to go out. It's a consciousness. It's going to be a whole meditation that allows you to go out of the space you're in. Because all brokenness is from seeing things from a locked up place and not allowing yourself to break down the prison chambers. In other words, to break down all the shells. As long as I'm in an eggshell, I'm eclipsed from all sides. If I don't have the courage to break the shell and to confuse the shell, I'm always going to remain there. Because that's the only reality I know. So Yayin HaMeshaka is going to be very different than Yayin HaMesameach. Before I can even find my simcha, I'm not ready to find my simcha. The reason I'm not ready to find my simcha is because I'm not ready to find myself, because I am not myself. So Yayin HaMeshaka means a person has to be able to spit out the trauma. A person has to spit out sometimes years and years of traumatic thoughts, repressed emotions and experience, because they completely define him. You're asking why you can't daven, why you're full of machshavas zaras. You don't even know that there's another way of thinking. You're stuck in a repetitive cycle of how you function, how you operate. So you need to get drunk. What's pshat drunk? He's going to say what pshat gets drunk is, you got to let go of how you see everything. And that's a painful experience because it's the only life you're used to. That's different than Yayin HaMesameach. When this is the drinking before Mrs. Bezdin, you have skilla. What's the skilla? The heart is like stone. In order to be able to fix the situation, you have to give him a drink. So Shlomo HaMelech says, Tnu yayin lemodei nefesh, tnu shecher la'ovid, v'yayin lemodei nefesh. He's talking about a certain type of yayin, a spiritual consciousness, a spiritual meditation, which is discussed in the hemshech of the Maamer, that we'll do in the next year, that basically allows a person to free themselves from that space. Now, when I'm in that space, I can't understand this. I could believe him if I trust him, but I can't understand this. I can't experience it, let's put it that way. Maybe I can understand it a little bit. Can't really even understand it. Because when somebody is in that space, they're locked up. In the first case, the person knows the wine. There's blockages, he wants to remove the blockages, but he has already a lot of access. So it's a whole different avodah. Here the person doesn't yet have access to anything. If my whole heart is stone, where do I have? I don't have access. All I'm hitting is a rock, or I'm burnt up. That's why the first step, even in recovery today, what's the first step? Huh? Before even detox. Obviously, you have to
admit you're an addict first.
And my life is?
Hell.
But you remember the word? Unmanageable. It's not manageable. In other words, I completely cannot manage. A person surrenders. Why is surrender so important? So you won't surrender. Because if you're not surrendering, it's on your terms. The moment it's on your terms, you could never get out. There was a Yid who came to the Maharash. I mentioned the Rashav, the father of the son of the Tzemach Tzedek. And he did a terrible, terrible thing. He needed a tikkun, but he was embarrassed to tell the Rebbe that he did it. So what do people do? I'm Baruch Hashem Zoichet to a lot of this. Comes into the Rebbe and he says, I have a best friend. And he's embarrassed to come. And he did this and this. And he asked me if I could come and ask you for a tikkun. So I have to say it in Yiddish. So the Rebbe Maharash tells him, ich verstehe nicht. Favos hat dein bester Chave gedacht schicken dir, kedei du sollst kennen sagen, was hat getan. Hat doch gekannt allein kommen und sagen, als du hast ihm geschickt. Right? Your best friend could have come and say that you did it, and you sent him to ask how to do it. He says, I don't understand the cheshbon. So he said, it was me. I'm sorry I lied. So somebody once asked me, people who live in ego games, so they have to make sure that nobody thinks that they fooled them. Sometimes teachers or parents have this power struggle with the kids, as though they themselves were kids. It's like, you can't lie to me, I know the truth. But people who are larger don't have that need. So what did the Rebbe Maharash care if he thinks he fooled him? Okay, so you fooled me. So what's going to happen? Says you don't understand the part. If you're not ready to say, I did it, no tikkun in the world will help you. You can give him every tikkun in the world. People think a tikkun is, you go to the kaisel for 40 days, then you'll jump from one keva to another keva for 90 days, then you'll read this tikkun or that tikkun for 3 years, and then you'll jump to this place and that place and that place, and then your sins will be cleansed. That's all worthless. It's all literally meaningless and worthless because it didn't even go into you. There's no ritual that can atone. The first thing you have to say is, I'm lost, and it's me. It's me. That's the first thing. Without that, it's not a tikkun. It's a robot. But the problem is, we think we're robots, and our sins are robotic. There's no person. It's not holistic. It's not organic. So the first step is he had to say, I did it. If you can't say I did it, it's worthless. So now we'll soon see what this Yayin HaMashakit is. Okay.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.